Hey everybody, just doing a little bit of a table update. It's not so much a table update as a kind of hobby wargaming update because I haven't really done as much recently as far as painting and hobbying. Part of that is personal stuff, nothing bad or anything. I just, as an aside, I've just been running, which I've not been exercising as much over the last year, and I've kind of started running quite a bit more, and that's just taken some personal time up. And so that's kind of gotten in the way of my painting. But another thing that's really gotten in the way in my painting is I've just been gaming a bit more and gaming new games that I've not played. It just so happens that some of my goals for this year were to be playing Savage Core, which I've started, and as well to try out Mordheim, and then as well to then transition into Saga 2.0, which came a lot quicker than I kind of thought it was going to do. It was always sort of that thing that was just sitting out there like, yeah, this spring I'll be doing it, but it really came in February, and I just wasn't really expecting it to come that early. So I actually have my first game of Saga 2nd Edition on Thursday, and then I have my first game of Mordheim on Saturday, and I just played my first game of Savage Core, like not last Friday, but the Friday before. And so for me, it's a lot of work to kind of transition into new rules and things. I just find, there's a lot of preparatory work because I like to know the rules somewhat decently, for the first game. And so they have to, do all the reading, and that takes away from painting time too. Probably even more so than the exercising that I was talking about. We do have, I'm going to talk a little bit about my list for Mordheim today. Just for those of you that are interested, I'm just going to talk about my choice of my miniatures and what I'm doing for my first list. And this is just the first game to test out the rules, and I'm not highly competitive, so if my opponent's watching this, I really want all the power to him. And so it's funny that I would even think of that, maybe that shows a little bit of competitiveness, but it doesn't bother me at all. So we're kind of both new to it, so we're just looking to have a fun game, exploring the rules and things. And so the other thing is I've done little... Well, before I get ahead of myself, we were having a Musty Wargamers on Thursday, so for those of you that enjoy those chats with myself and Rusty from over at Helcorex, this week's will be on his channel on Thursday, and like usual, it's going to be 7 Mountain or 8 Central, and there'll be a countdown on his channel when he puts that up. And so I will put, again, a link below in the description of this video to Rusty's channel, because we bounce back and forth in hosting the Musty Wargamers. On that show, besides regular topics, I am planning to talk about how the first game went, because I'll have played it that morning before filming the show in the evening live. And so, Saga 2.0, I am actually excited to try that out. And that's another game where it's not going to be overly competitive. My opponent and I just got his rules last night, I think, shipped. And so we're just, kind of going to be going through it and seeing how the new rules sort of gel. I'm expecting good things. And in preparation of the new rules, I've always used this, my own... I know that they sell sticks for Saga, but I've always used this as my Saga measuring stick, and I've loved... It's worked perfect. I mean, this is for long... medium, goes from here back, short, and then very short are the measuring lengths for Saga. And so because the new rules are slightly different in movement, and they require, like in some cases, going 2 medium moves, one after the other, like as far as you're measuring, I ended up breaking this stick down and creating a new one to use also in the 2nd edition. And so I have a medium that's green because my medium was always green to designate that. I've got a short, which is yellow, but just, not the length of the whole stick like the yellow one here. And then I have very short, which is red. And I'm going to sort of varnish those and have those now for 2nd edition. I don't have these lined up perfectly. That's why they're not measuring up here. But basically, in particular with movement in Saga, like positioning and things like the very short and the short, very short and the short are going to be important to use a little bit more often in the movement and the way you have unit coherency and place your miniatures. For 2nd edition, it's a little bit different, and so those I think are going to come in handy. So that was just a quick thing I did on the side. I have a little bit before I go into the Mordheim warband, I have a little bit of a change in how I'm doing storage solutions that I'm going to talk about, storing all my miniatures. And I've been working on that as well instead of painting, and I'll show that in a moment. But I'm really enjoying, like, I've read through the rules for Mordheim, and I really enjoyed it. I realize I'm kind of coming to the party late. You know, this is a classic game, and I wasn't really gaming at all when Mordheim was available. But now, having followed Mordheim on the Facebook groups and just, like, reading it myself and looking into it, it really seems like a game that's up my alley. I love the whole campaign aspect and the whole character progression and the story generation aspect of it. And I love the fact that it sort of takes place in kind of like old world Warhammer fantasy. It just seems like a lot of fun. I love the rules and the way they sort of have went on sort of a side street on the standard DW formula. It sort of builds on that, and it just adds a lot of nice stuff for skirmish. And so, yeah, so I didn't heavily research like how I should best do a Beastman list, but what I've got is I've got my captain hero, chieftain, I guess he's for a Beastman called, and with that one, I chose to, everybody can get a dagger for free, but I chose to give him a two-handed weapon, and if you look at this, it's a pretty large axe, and so I think it's suitable to be considered a two-handed weapon. There are abilities that allow you to wield a two-handed weapon as a character with, you know, just one-handedly. Couple of abilities, actually, which he may end up getting throughout the game, who knows. But I also did give him, so this is a double-handed weapon and heavy armor. So I actually paid for heavy armor for him starting the game. So he is a hero in Mordheim. And then I have one more hero only. I don't own any Bestigors at the moment that I have painted up that are suitable, and so I didn't take Bestigor heroes, which I would like in the future to do that, but I chose to take a Centaur, not a Centaur, but a Centaur, and he is going to be a hero, and I did give him heavy armor as well. The game is supposed to be what you see is what you get, and he does have chainmail up here and some plate on in the front. He's not like covered in armor for sure, but I decided to give him heavy armor. And some of the weapons are hard to know what to represent. Like, this looks like a pickaxe to me, sort of like a sharpened pickaxe. I just gave him an axe to represent that, and that was pretty much it. Just the axe and the heavy armor. So those are my two heroes. And as an aside, I did bring one hound. Now, they're not part of any henchman group. There's just one. I guess maybe he's his own henchman group because he's not of the same type as the others. That's my understanding. I'll have to reread it again, whether or not you have more than one henchman group or they're all one henchman group. I don't remember. But I think he would be his own henchman group. I'm not sure. But one of the things that I did struggle a little bit with is the modeling, because the game is supposed to be what you see is what you get, and all your henchmen are supposed to be modeled with the same weapons when they're part of a henchman group. So I have 3 Gors, and I have 3 Ungors. Let's move over here. And what I've decided to do, because they have to be all modeled, all given the same weapons, is just give them all axes. Now, some of them have arguably swords. They're more like machetes. They're hacking weapons. I just decided to call that an axe instead of a sword. I think my opponent will be fine with it. I mean, like, that's the idea. I know it's fun to actually model things. I like the idea of what you see is what you get, but I just got the standard Beastmen pack, and they didn't even give you all of one weapon. Like, they didn't give you enough to give everybody one weapon 3 times. And so with what I have modeled, even having before read the rules, I think that's just the easiest way to do it. Because, like, these guys both have axes, so it's like majority have axes anyway. And then on this side, I have a guy with an axe. This is my Ungors. A guy with, I'd probably most likely call this a club, but it's actually a skull with like a big spike sticking out of it. So I'm just going to call that an axe. Just sort of act as if it's sharpened on the bottom and it's a hacking weapon. And then lastly, I have the same sword that the other guy has there, which is sort of like a hack, like a big butcher knife sword, and so we're just going to call it an axe. Um, so that's my sort of list to start Mordheim with. For anybody that plays Mordheim, if you have any comments, particularly if you play Beastmen, on the way I did this, I chose not to do the Minotaur. Minotaur is 200 gold pieces. I guess he can get experience, but he can't go up, like, you know, in level, like to become a hero or something like that. You know, he's still considered kind of like an animal. And so I just decided, yeah, I'll just maybe buy a Beastman later. And the other thing was the Shaman too. I looked at the Shaman spells for Chaos, and I don't know what you guys think for the Chaos rituals is what they're called, that you can use. But they looked kind of interesting, but I just wasn't sure starting the game how good they were going to be. And so I just decided to invest in, particularly I wanted the 3 Gores because they can actually technically graduate and actually become heroes. This guy was really cheap, so it just wasn't an issue to just get him with leftover points. And then he can actually graduate too, but he's also pretty powerful. He's almost like kind of equivalent. He's a lot faster, but he's kind of equivalent to my captain as far as his martial prowess starting the game. And then the Ungors can't graduate, you know, and to become heroes. They'll always be henchmen, but they were kind of cheap. And so I just decided to go that way. So I potentially have 5 characters that can gain experience and do something with them out of my total of 9 characters. And so I don't know whether it's a good list or not, to be honest. I'm not stressing about it a whole lot, but I just kind of thought, yeah, this might be a good thing to start with. Try the game out. I won't be, the one thing I was a little worried about was actually overpowering, like, and having like a few miniatures, like 3 to 5, and like making them all buffed out. Because then, like, if one like dies due to some stray arrow or something, like, you know, you just invested all those points, and also like, depending on the scenario we do, there's that aspect of needing to be able to complete scenarios and needing miniatures to do it. And so I just kind of thought I'd go this route. I'm going to just quickly pan over here to show you something else I've been working on. So here's just some of the storage solution that I've purchased, but I've kind of went, in some ways, I've went the long haul and decided to invest in a new way to store my miniatures. Now, I've been a big fan of KR Multicase for years. One of the things that I've really liked is that I would buy like one cloth case, and then I would just, to transport things with, and I would just buy the boxes and the foam, and just instead of having to buy the whole thing, I just buy the boxes when I need to. But it's still actually a pretty expensive solution. And I do find that occasionally, like, things do get bent, like spears get knocked off and stuff, just from putting them. A lot of my Saga stuff, like where I have like warriors holding spears, like you put them into the foam, and sometimes they do get kind of, it's not so much jostled around during transport, but it's just like where you place them, like spears get bent and things like that. And so I decided, after seeing a post on Facebook by Derek Kinsman, who, you know, occasionally chats on the channel, he had just showed like an article, because he's into this solution as well, where you have these mailer boxes with magnetic sheeting on the bottom, and then you have something to magnetize your miniature to the magnetic sheeting. Maybe your base itself is a washer, maybe you put something under your base. And so I have, this is only about half of what I have as far as boxes, but I have probably enough boxes to last a lifetime now, because I bought like a bulk purchase of these mailers. They're basically, they're 18 inches long by 12 inches deep, and then there's a height of 3 inches, 3 to 4 inches, I don't remember, something like that. And essentially, these should be enough to be able to allow height for spears and things like that. They're pretty good height, actually. And I'm thinking that just by being like down, as long as they hold well on the magnet, which I'll show in a moment, that they will potentially be a really efficient way to store armies, because I can't even imagine like how many armies that I could store there. Like, I can store for some games multiple sides in one of these boxes, and so it's really nice just for my shelf there, to be able to just store all this stuff conveniently. So I'm going to pan back and just show you what I've done so far with it. So this box is big enough that unless I go really far back in the room. I have to actually really zoom my tripod out here. The top of these, I'll show the top of the box in a second and how the tabs go into the box, but what I ended up doing is I ended up putting washers underneath the bases. Now, one of the concerns I had in doing this is that I didn't want the washers to be really thick and actually raise the base significantly off the table. So I found by looking around these washers that are actually kind of specialized and they're not cheap. I was able to find them at Home Depot, but I actually ordered them through a local hardware store from the manufacturer instead of buying them at Home Depot. But I got these like 3/8 spacer washers. Unfortunately, they ended up being a little more expensive than I thought. I thought the guy was quoting me a different number by the box when I was talking to him on the phone. I thought I was going to get them for a lot cheaper. I ended up paying a lot of money because I ended up getting 400 of these, which is going to last me like for 400 miniatures essentially, for the most part, unless it's a large miniature and I use 2, which I'll show in a moment. But they're steel, and they're not stainless steel, or zinc coated, which some of those are just not, you can't magnetize with them, but they're really thin, and so for the most part on a board, I don't think you're really going to notice them. Like if you really look close, you can see that they're slightly raised, but to be honest, I think for the most part, this is just this miniature. Some of them where the miniatures are hollow, you're not going to actually really notice it at all. They're going to sit into the hollow piece and be flush with the bottom. So I kind of tested this on some of the square 25 millimeter bases and round 25 millimeter bases that are hollow, but these are solid bottoms. Now, only one from I had the animal pack on the counter that I've been working on, and only one of the miniatures in the animal pack really didn't hold well as far as the magnetism. This is car magnet. It's I think it's called 0.3 mil or 30 mil. It's one of those two, but it's basically what you would have on the side of a car, sticking on the side of a car for like a sign. And I used liquid nail, and I just affixed it down to the box because it didn't have an adhesive side. For the most part, when I move, or if I just tilt this, if you see here, when I tilt it, these don't move. Okay, they're actually hold pretty nicely. I'm gonna knock some things around on my desk. This one in particular, because it's a really top-heavy miniature and there's a lot of metal on this, like adult cow on a small miniature, and I only used one. It holds, but if I tilt it enough and if I jostle enough, it will fall. It will slide and fall. It's not been the best. I probably could put more, like maybe some thin steel on the bottom, or just be careful with it. But like these ones technically have less metal and have a bigger base. These horses, which I haven't painted yet, and I've just put 2, and they actually hold really well. Just with the 2 of them there, it really is just surface area. But there's really, I'm not concerned about them at all, like these horses on there. And those will be about the same size as the bases as like my Warlord bases for Saga. And so I paid a little bit extra when buying these boxes. I had the choice of a tab that, see if I can show. So I had a choice of a tab that just slides down in the front and just sits in, or a tab that kind of goes like this. And I actually chose this one that sort of hooks in. It was just a little bit more than the other one, not significantly, but yeah, overall, quite happy with this. I'm just going to pan back now because now this thing's taking the whole screen up. So yeah, really not a whole lot else just to talk about. I've just found that all of my gaming converging that I was planning on doing this spring has actually taken a lot of my time in sort of reading rules, which I've talked about on the channel before. Like, I'm not really one to read rule books as like regular books, like just pick up rule books and read them if I'm not playing them. If I'm not planning on playing a game, or even, I generally won't read the rules for it, and I tend to actually schedule reading time for rules actually just a week or 2 in advance of a game, and because, yeah, like I just don't, I actually prefer to paint in general, and so and to do hobbying. And so right now I've got a little bit of a dry spell of hobbying, and I'm just doing more gaming and preparing for games, either with little things like this, or getting my, working on storage solutions because of all the hobbying I've been doing, and then reading rules, and then setting aside a time to game itself. And so, yeah, like, I guess I am enjoying that I'm getting some games in, but and so I'll incorporate, or I guess I should say that I'll mention on the channel just how those games have went and what I think of them. And so, yeah, anything that you guys can share regarding Mordheim, I'm kind of interested in the comments for those of you that are watching and have played it. I'm also interested in what you guys think of Saga 2.0 so far that have played games. And so, yeah, feel free to leave comments there. And please, if you're interested, tune in to the Musty Wargamers at this week at Hellcorrex's channel in the link below, where I will talk about Saga 2.0, and we have a couple other topics that we're going to be talking about. Okay, everybody, hope you guys are having a good week, and take care.